you ever wondered how close we've come to global annihilation during the Cold War? The year is 1945. The world is still nursing the wounds of the Second World War. But even as the dust settles, the seeds of another conflict are being sown. This new struggle wouldn't see the same open warfare. No, this was a war of ideologies, a war of influence, a war of power. It was the dawn of the Cold War. On one side, the United States of America, a beacon of democracy and capitalism. On the other, the Soviet Union, a powerhouse of communism and state control. These two superpowers, emerging from the ashes of a war-torn world, found themselves locked in a bitter rivalry that would shape the course of history. The Iron Curtain, an ideological boundary slicing through Europe, became a symbol of this Cold War. To the west of this curtain lay the democratic nations, influenced by the United States. To the east, the communist bloc, under the firm hand of the Soviet Union. In the midst of this brewing conflict, significant events began to unfold. In 1947, the Truman Doctrine was announced. This policy, driven by the fear of communist expansion, pledged that the United States would support countries threatened by Soviet forces. It was the first explicit declaration of the Cold War. Then came the Marshall Plan in 1948, a massive economic aid package from the United States to Western Europe. This was not just charity. It was a strategic move to strengthen democratic governments and prevent the spread of communism. These events, among others, deepened the divide between the superpowers, driving the world further into the Cold War. A war not of tanks and soldiers, but of ideologies and influence. And thus, the stage was set for a global struggle for power. A war not fought with bullets, but with ideas and influence. As the 1950s dawned, the Cold War began to heat up. Tensions escalated as the United States and the Soviet Union, the two superpowers of the world, vied for global dominance. The struggle for power was not just confined to the political and military arenas, but extended into every facet of life, from technology to ideology. In the Far East, the Korean War erupted in 1950, a brutal conflict that pitted North against South, communism against capitalism. This was not merely a local skirmish. It was a proxy war, with the Soviets and Chinese backing the North and the US supporting the South. The war ended in a stalemate, with the Korean peninsula divided along the 38th parallel, a division that remains to this day. While the Korean War raged, another significant development was unfolding in Europe. In 1949, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, better known as NATO, was established by the US and its Western allies. Not to be outdone, the Soviet Union countered with the formation of the Warsaw Pact in 1955, cementing the division of Europe into two hostile camps. Then came the space race. Both superpowers strived for technological supremacy, with each milestone in space exploration becoming a symbol of national pride and a testament to the superiority of their respective systems. The launch of the Soviet satellite Sputnik in 1957 marked the beginning of this high-stakes competition. But it was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 that brought the world to the edge of the abyss. The discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, a mere 90 miles from the US mainland, sparked a 13-day standoff. The crisis was averted, but only just, and the world heaved a sigh of relief. The world held its breath as the two superpowers teetered on the brink of nuclear war. In the late 1960s, a slight thaw in relations began. The icy standoff between the world's superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, began to show signs of a melt. This period, known as détente, was marked by a decrease in hostilities and an increase in diplomatic communications. During this era, the two nations came to realize that their rivalry could potentially lead to mutual destruction. As a result, they began to engage in a series of negotiations aimed at limiting the arms race. This led to the signing of the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, or SALT treaties. The first of these, SALT I, signed in 1972, marked a significant shift in the Cold War dynamics. For the first time, the two superpowers agreed to limit the growth of their nuclear arsenals. This was followed by SALT II in 1979, which further limited the number of strategic nuclear delivery vehicles each side could possess. However, It was not just in the realm of arms control that relations began to thaw. The superpowers also started to engage in a series of diplomatic dialogues on a wide range of issues. This increased communication led to a better understanding of each other's positions and helped to reduce the risk of misinterpretation leading to conflict. A significant step towards peace was the signing of the Helsinki Accords in 1975. This agreement, signed by 35 countries including the US and the Soviet Union, aimed to improve relations between the Communist bloc and the West. It acknowledged the inviolability of post-World War II borders in Europe and committed the signatories to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms. These developments suggested a softening of the Cold War's rigid lines. Yet while the ice was cracking, it was far from shattered. The Cold War seemed to be cooling, but beneath the surface, tensions remained. The stage was set for further struggles and eventual resolution, but that's a story for another time. The 1980s saw a return of hostilities, but also the beginning of the end. The decade kicked off with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1980, an act that not only ignited fierce resistance within the country, but also rekindled Cold War anxieties. The United States, under President Ronald Reagan, responded with what came to be known as the Reagan Doctrine. This policy provided overt and covert aid to anti-communist guerrillas and resistance movements in an effort to roll back Soviet-backed communist governments. Reagan's aggressive stance against the Soviet Union wasn't just diplomatic. He also launched the Strategic Defense Initiative, a plan for a space-based system to protect America from attack by strategic nuclear ballistic missiles. This initiative, dubbed Star Wars by the media, was a bold move that intensified the arms race and heightened tensions. However, even as hostilities escalated, changes were brewing within the Soviet Union. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev rose to power and implemented two significant policies that would help to thaw the Cold War. Glasnost, or openness, allowed for greater freedom of speech and transparency in government, while perestroika, or restructuring, aimed at reforming the Soviet economy. The effects of these policies were profound and far-reaching. They led to a greater awareness among the Soviet people of the problems plaguing their country and sparked demands for change. This culminated in the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, a symbolic event that signaled the crumbling of the Iron Curtain and the impending end of the Cold War. Yet, despite the dramatic fall of the wall, the Cold War didn't end with a grand showdown or a decisive victory. Instead, it wound down quietly as the Soviet Union, weakened by economic troubles and political unrest, slowly dissolved. The Cold War ended not with a bang but with a whimper as the Soviet Union dissolved. A global struggle for power that had defined much of the 20th century concluded not on the battlefield, but in the realm of ideas and ideologies. It was an end as complex and nuanced as the conflict itself. The Cold War may have ended over 3 decades ago, but its impact is still felt today. Our world today is indelibly marked by the footprints of the Cold War. The struggle between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, has left an indelible imprint on international relations. The bipolar power structure that marked this era has since given way to a unipolar world, with the United States emerging as the sole superpower. The Cold War also gave birth to NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Born as a defensive pact against the perceived threat of Soviet aggression, NATO continues to play a pivotal role on the international stage. Its continued relevance is a testament to the enduring legacy of the Cold War. It remains a powerful military and political alliance, its influence extending far beyond the Atlantic. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Cold War is the ideological divide it entrenched. The clash between capitalism and communism, between democracy and totalitarianism, continues to shape global politics. It has spawned countless political and ideological disputes, their roots tracing back to the Cold War era. The ideological struggle of the Cold War also continues to fuel conflicts around the world, from the Korean Peninsula to the Middle East. The echoes of this ideological battle are still heard in the heated debates on democracy and human rights, on economic systems and political structures. So, while the Cold War may have ended, its shadows linger. Its impact continues to shape the contours of our world, influencing international relations, global politics, and ideological discourses. The Cold War serves as a stark reminder of the destructive potential of ideological conflict and the threat of global warfare, but it also stands as a testament to the power of diplomacy and dialogue, of negotiation and compromise, that ultimately brought an end to this tense period of history. The Cold War shaped the world we live in today, a testament to the enduring power of ideology and the ever-present threat of global conflict.